Regular meeting of the Sierra Sands Unified School District Board of Education, and we will stand for the pledge led by Brody Zay.
Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will now observe a moment of silence. Thank you, and welcome to our first official 6 o'clock regular meeting of the Board of Education. Hope this works out better for everyone. Item number 1, adoption of the agenda. Any changes? No changes. It will stand as presented. And we move to item 2, approval of minutes of the special and regular meetings of March 7th, 2024. If there are no changes or corrections, this will stand as presented. And we'll move to item 3, programs and presentations. Presentation for action on magnet school focus areas. And I want to introduce Dr. Savko and just share how excited I am about some of the directions we're beginning to head. And it's so nice to talk about new options for our community in educational opportunity.
Good evening, President Ferris. I share in your excitement. Members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Moore, staff and community. Just a little bit of background for the board and our community members. For several months, a committee was put together, the Facilities and Programs Advisory Committee, and that committee did a lot of investigation and evaluation of potential reconfiguration of the district. And at the January 31st board meeting, that committee presented the most viable configurations for district reorganization. At the conclusion of that meeting, the board provided direction for Pierce and Buick to be magnet schools beginning in the 25-26 academic year. And this presentation provides further details on magnet schools in general, focus areas, and the results of the recent magnet school survey. One of the things that's really important in any kind of reconfiguration conversation is having shared definitions, because I might think magnet school means something and others might have an entirely different definition. So it's really important to share that information together. So according to the California Department of Education, magnet schools provide students and their parents, guardians, caregivers choices other than attending their local school. A local school would be your neighborhood school. You're zoned for that school, and generally you attend that because of the proximity. The magnet program or school is usually based on a specific curriculum theme or occupational cluster. Most common are STEM or STEAM. However, there are many others. Research distinguishes magnet school characteristics as a distinctive school curriculum organized around a specific theme such as STEM or the arts, or a specific emphasis such as language immersion. Voluntary enrollment and choice across neighborhood or school boundaries, and then a diverse student population. So why magnet schools? Why might the board consider that for our community? So research suggests, and in all transparency, research can suggest just about anything. So you can find research that will dispute all of this, and you can find research that affirms this, so we want to disclose that. So research does suggest in most cases that students experience increased achievement. There are higher levels of motivation and satisfaction with the school. There are higher levels of teacher motivation and morale, and higher levels of parent satisfaction with the school. So something that was really important to our board and our superintendent was to include the community in our fact and perception gathering. And so the district partnered with Hanover Research to develop and administer a short survey to gather perceptions from parents and families regarding interest in possible development of magnet schools as part of the district's reconfiguration process. 320 complete parent-family responses were collected in that survey. The next few slides go over the general results of the survey. So overall, there was a slightly larger percentage of respondents interested or very interested in a magnet school option focused on STEM, so 73%, as compared to VAPA, 68%. More respondents indicated they would likely or very likely consider VUIG as a school choice option compared to Pierce at 36%. Now, of the 36 respondents who indicated interest or very interested in Pierce as a magnet, results in interested or very interested were STEM at 78% and VAPA at 65%. Of the 46 respondents who indicated interested or very interested in VUIG as a magnet, indicated the interests were STEM at 80% and then VAPA at 64%. So based on the work of the Facilities and Programs Advisory Committee and the most viable configurations for our unique community, and we do have schools that are overpopulated, and their facilities are overutilized, and we have aging facilities with lack of funding for those facilities. It's recommended that the board authorize Pierce as a TK6 Visual and Performing Arts Magnet School, and then VUIG as a TK8 Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math Magnet School. Before we discuss this, I'm going to present just a little bit more context for magnet schools in the frame of now what? How might we pursue that if the board takes action on that recommendation? We don't have all the solutions, we don't have all of the direction, but we've got a great vision and we have a way forward. So again, the next couple of slides are going to get into detail about what that could look like in terms of process. So program design considerations are extremely important to any community considering a magnet school. And research indicates that district leaders should convene a collaborative team of stakeholders to outline that clear vision, theme, and priority area to guide the design and implementation of new magnet programs. So this recommendation is consistent with the district vision of growing a community of engaged learners connecting to future opportunities through innovative education. And lastly, the students, parents, community, and staff have confirmed the themes and priority areas of STEM and VAPA. If we are given authorization to continue this work, we are going to engage in research-based best practices. And those are going to center around 5 pillars around designing and sustaining successful magnet schools, which are creating a diverse and culturally competent environment with empathy, respect, and collaboration, innovative curriculum, along with professional development to support that implementation, academic excellence, high-quality instructional systems, and very importantly, family and community partnerships in that work. The next steps include, but I can't emphasize enough, but are not limited to. These are very broad categories with a year's worth of work attached to each one of these. Collaboration with our bargaining units, an update of our policies, especially enrollment, as magnet schools are schools of choice. We will need to establish multiple advisory committees surrounding significant work. We need to identify the teachers of these specific programs. We will need to develop instructional program that would entail curricula, master schedules, materials, and learning spaces in the DODEA, or the Department of Defense, design for these spaces. Professional development, and again, leading with strengthening family, community, and educational partnerships as we begin this journey together. So now the next step is questions and discussion.
We have questions or comments from board members? Kurt?
Yeah, a couple questions, comments. First, it seemed interesting to me that there was a lot of discussion with the parents that were interviewed about their perceptions of Pierce versus VWIG. Do we have any way to assess how much people really know about Pierce and VWIG to be able to make those distinctions? My thought being that, if my kids go to Pierce, I know a lot about Pierce, but I probably don't know much really about VWIG and vice versa. And if my kids don't go to either one of those, how much do I know about those sites? So when we look at data that indicates that there are, significant perceptions about those things, how do we know that that's real valid data?
That's a great question. My understanding is that preceding the survey, potential participants in our entire community had access to that framing message, that video that was put together. I don't think there was a whole lot of depth about this is what could be at Pierce or this is what could be at VWIG. Really, the context was this is an opportunity to invest in our education system and again, create innovative opportunities. So I would add a wonder to your question in that as we pursue this, hopefully, we will spend a significant amount of time communicating the vision and the program aspects prior to the open enrollment period so that parents, all parents, not just VWIG parents or Pierce parents, it would be open to all elementary, and in VWIG's case, 7th and 8th graders, that they would have a very detailed information in which to inform their open enrollment request or decision.
Okay.
I would add, well, you have great questions, and we can't get into everyone's mind. The purpose of our survey specifically was to see if these two schools in various magnet configurations would be viable, and so we kept it brief to that point, and that's kind of what we did find, is that they are viable, but that would all take much more diving in.
Sure. Okay. Thanks. Yeah, I didn't think it would be an easy question to answer, but it did strike me as relevant to the data, I guess. The other comment I'd make is that, when you look at this, there may be a lot of people out there that think that, okay, yeah, here's a magnet school focused on STEM. Does that mean there's no VAPA component? And here's a school focused on VAPA. Does that mean there's no STEM component? And I think the answer is no. The reality is that while there's a focus on STEM at one location, there will be VAPA opportunities as well. If there's a focus on VAPA in one location, then there certainly is STEM education going on as well. It's really a focus issue, not a complete exclusion of the other, one or the other. So I think that's important to understand as well.
May I add to your thinking? I think our board has been very supportive of the arts, and we are so thankful to the California Department of Education for establishing the Arts and Instructional Materials Block Grant, and then also Prop 28 to infuse funding to support arts into our schools. And if you recall, this was our first year being able to implement elementary music teachers. So I would agree, it's not an exclusion, it's rather a matter of what's the level of inclusion and enhancement to any of the curriculum.
Right, thanks. And I guess my last thought is that, as you presented which focus area you would suggest at which campus, one of the things that I don't, maybe you mentioned it and I didn't hear it, but I think our opportunity for size of campus and number of students served is larger at VWIG than it is at Pierce. And based on the data that shows that the interest in STEM is larger than VAPA, as well as the potential for making that campus a TK8 versus TK6, would indicate that having STEM at the VWIG campus is what makes the most sense just from a sheer numbers perspective. You know, setting aside people's perceptions of Pierce versus VWIG for any other reason. That was just an observation I thought was important.
Right, and one of the reasons why we're able to include Pierce and VWIG, which is unusual, in the Department of Defense grant application is because Pierce does have a capacity issue, which is why we're able to, from my understanding, we're able to include a VWIG build so we can alleviate and address the Pierce capacity, but what a wonderful opportunity for our community to have hopefully, a wonderful new school. And 7 elementaries versus 6. What a wonderful, innovative opportunity.
Great. Thank you.
I think it's also important to understand, and I think you've said this pretty clearly, that this is a process, and this is the stage we are in the process. And this first go-around of what do you think as a community really isn't the end-all, be-all, but are we on the right track? Is there a significant amount of interest? Because what we don't want to do is start down a road and then find out, oh my goodness, this is us only. Our constituency is not interested in this whatsoever. I think this tells us, yes, there is significant interest. Yes, there are a lot of details that will have to be, what you've laid out here to me is a lot of work. It's clear that we're going to have to do a lot to get to that point. But it also is clear to me that what an opportunity for our community and what an opportunity for the kids in our community for educational variation. And those kind of opportunities are coming partly because a lot of things just happen to align.
Right.
But it won't happen right unless we do the work that's laid out here. It is a significant amount of work, but I believe it's clearly going to be worth it in the end for us to be able to look back and say, wow, this, as a community, we came together and did this. We did it thoughtfully, we did it collaboratively, and we will have to identify a lot of folks who have done a lot of work by the time we get there. So to me, those are some real important elements as we move forward. If we choose to do that, that we recognize what we're getting into, what kind of commitment it takes on all of our parts, but yet at the end, what's the vision? What potentially will we have that we do not have now? And also knowing that there are some things that we're limited by right now that have to change.
Right.
So taking advantage of all those things at the same time, to me, makes a lot of sense. Robert, were you getting ready to say something?
Yes, I just want to thank the committee for all the hard work they put in on this. I remember back when we had back to basics at VWIG, and it was highly competitive to get in. And I mean, there was some problems in the beginning, but we worked it out, and it became really a great school, you know, back to basic school. And you know, what I've seen of Richmond and Gateway, that I went to their open houses this week, they're doing an awesome job. I mean, I was thoroughly impressed by the classrooms, and I think maybe I better get out of the country when I was at Richmond. I mean, there's some beautiful country out there that I haven't seen. But no, I think it's great. I really appreciate that we're going this route. I think it's going to be really positive. I think it's a great idea.
Yeah, I'd like to add,
Mary?
Great opportunity for our community and our kids, for sure. And the teachers are the ones that are gonna make this happen as well, because they're the ones that are in this classroom. And it may seem scary, because it's like you're going from this grade to that grade, or this grade, and you're not sure, and it's the unsure, the unknown. But you're a teacher, and teachers can teach wherever they are. And I believe that they will do well and things will fly and soar. And we need feedback as well. Give us the feedback so we can help. We don't know what's happening if there's no feedback, but I believe the teachers are our main people. Well, along with everyone, but they're the ones in the trenches. So, thank you.
Any other comments from board members? Kurt?
Yeah, I did have one other thing too. We haven't talked a lot about TK6 versus TK8. You know, I think through the process of, you know, everything you've laid out here and all the hard work that's coming up over the next year, I know we will get to a point where that decision would be made. But on the surface, I think I like the TK8 approach. You know, I guess for a number of reasons, but one of them is that, you know, people are somewhat concerned about the population size at Murray when we move all of the middle schoolers to that campus. And here's an opportunity to provide some relief there as well. So I'm cautiously optimistic that the TK8 idea is a good one.
And I'd like to comment also, I think that it is just another opportunity to recognize that not everyone sees the configuration the same way, and not everyone's student benefits from the same configuration. And so again, that gives us another option, another choice for parents to say, you know, for my child, this is the kind of configuration that I believe they can be successful in. And that's something we haven't had the opportunity to do before. And I think Mary's point's very well taken. For this to be successful, the collaboration will have to be strong. It will have to be complete. It will have to involve all of us to make this happen. And I think going into that, us recognizing that, and again, recognizing what level of work is required is important. Any other comments or questions from board members?
I guess the only thing I'd do is this item appears to have an action associated with it, and if that's true,
It
then
does.
I move the recommended action.
I have a motion. Do I have a second? Second. Been moved and seconded. Dr. Moore.
So if we could go to the next slide, I did just want to clarify, related to Mr. Rockwell's comment, we are asking for action to not only designate the focus areas, but also designate TK8 for viewing. Now, the phase in may be all at once, or it may be partial based on interest as we open it up and do the staffing selection and as we go through the various processes. But we are looking to make that actual action as part of it all, the package tonight, which will help provide staff clarity and help us move forward with our bargaining units and all the many great steps that Dr. Savko outlined.
So that is the recommended action that you moved, correct?
Yes.
And that you seconded, right, Mary? Make sure we're all on
Yep,
the same
second.
page here. Do I have any questions or comments from members of the public? If you do, I'd ask you please step up to the microphone and address the board and share your name with us as well. Thank you so much. Yeah, right here? Yeah. Uh-huh.
Kathy McCoy, teach at Pierce, third grade, and data vice president. Speaking kind of on behalf of Pierce, we have a lot of questions and we don't have a lot of information. It sounds like we're going to need to apply to stay at Pierce. Is that correct? Like to be able to stay at Pierce? Is that what we're thinking, that we have to apply for those positions? Can you answer that? I don't know, maybe you can't.
I can say, and I savor this comment, that is for HR and the bargaining units to discuss. I'm happy to be a consultant, so I don't have the answer because I think that's going to be a collaboration between data and human resources.
So to be determined based on this collaborative effort as we create.
Right. So Pierce is in a little bit of an uproar because no one knows who's going, who's staying, if they should be moving. Some people don't want to move, but they're concerned that they're going to get told to move, and so they're thinking, should I move now? So we have a lot of questions, and it is sort of affecting morale a little bit, I think, at Pierce with the teachers because we don't know what's happening. I know, I personally, I've been at Pierce for 19 of my 20 years here, and I don't want to go anywhere. But that is something that we are a little bit concerned about. Also, there had been talk about possibly no busing for the magnet schools. Do we know where we're on that? Because I know that that has been a concern as far as equity. Do you know?
That was a concern and a consideration we presented to the board in terms of the direction. And so at this time, it's undetermined, but equity is definitely a lens because it would kind of be counterproductive, right? To create a school of choice, but then you may exclude students if there's no busing and it's not their
Exactly.
fault.
If-
Like, what
especially if we're at Monroe,
Right,
then those kids wouldn't have a chance to get there. And I feel like if they went, Pierce kids, if they went to Richmond as their neighborhood school during that time, likely wouldn't transition back. So I think that's just something to be thought of. But mainly, I just wanted to say that Pierce, we're the ones who are primarily being affected, and we are very concerned just about what the process will be and being kept in the loop because we don't know what's happening. So thank you.
Can I make
Go
a
ahead, Kurt.
comment on that? Yeah, assuming we pass this action this evening, what you see on that board right there will be the only decision that has been made, right? So, we could go behind closed doors and lay something out and then lay in front of you the decision that we're gonna go do this, and then you don't have to have this time where things seem kinda all over the place before the decision, or we can, be open like this at the very beginning and say, hey, we've got to figure this out and we need to work with you to figure it out, and it'll take time. So, that collaboration process isn't quick, but we want to take the time to get it right. So, will we have a immediate answer to allay those fears that, how are the changes going to be made? Next week? No. But what the benefit of that is that you can be involved in making the decisions for how we go about implementing the changes and deciding what changes should be implemented. So I understand the kind of nervousness or, whatever the feelings are, piece of this, but I think, hopefully what you can do is trust the process and understand that the intent is to be very collaborative in how we decide how we go forward, if that makes sense.
I do, I understand that. Just to remind you, elementary is not secondary. We move houses, we don't move 2 milk crates. So when we move somewhere, it's quite a process. So those are all of our thoughts.
It might be helpful also if you can just give a general concept of time frame that we're talking about, that this process will take for us to get to that end result, because we're not talking about this like next week. So,
Right, but this is
I mean,
the time that
we will only be
teachers
talking-
are making those decisions
Correct.
to move because they're concerned about what will
right,
happen.
but just in general, can you give us a rough idea of what kind of a timeline?
So our HR team will, starting tomorrow, reach out to the data team and see when can we get together. We do know our last month of school is very busy all around, but
Let me
we will
clarify. I
be.
mean, what kind of timeline are we looking that the actual campuses will be operational?
The actual implementation is
yes,
over a
yes,
year
not-
from now.
yeah, the process-
Right, so fall of 2025 is the actual implementation. And we're hoping to have clarity for staffing in the fall. But so it's not going to be a fast decision,
Yeah.
but we're ready to move and collaborate immediately, but knowing that it
Yeah.
will take a little bit of time to figure out a lot of the details.
Thank you. That's what I was looking for.
Thank you.
And again, I believe you're absolutely accurate in what kinds of things we have to consider and what kind of things have to be done. That's why I think we keep talking about the collaboration that's going to have to happen. A lot of people involved, a lot of people this is their very life, their very livelihood. It's not to be just glossed over.
We are very wrapped. Our life is our job. So
Absolutely.
So can I
Thank you.
ask, just to clarify, make sure I heard that I understood correctly what I heard you say? So the intent is this will be implemented in fall of 2025, but that a significant portion of the answers to Ms. McCoy's questions will be laid flat potentially as early as the fall of 2024.
Correct, that is our
Okay.
plan.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from members of the public? Hearing none, I will call for the question. It has been recommended that we move the recommended action, of which Pierce will be a magnet for TK6 Visual and Performing Arts, and VWIG a TK8 Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you very much, and thank you folks for your observation and participation. Brings us to public hearing, item 4, public hearing for the annual budget plan and annual service plan for the 24-25 school year for the Sierra Sands SELPA. Mr. Delbeck.
President Ferris, members of the school board, colleagues, I'm here to present for public hearing our annual budget and service plan for the 24-25 school year for Sierra Sands SELPA. Background information, Assembly Bill 602 requires special education local plans, known as SELPAs, to submit an annual budget plan and annual service plan for adoption after a public hearing of the board. As required in Ed Code Section 56205, together these plans must identify expected expenditures and include a description of services, the physical location of the services, and must demonstrate that all individuals with exceptional needs are being met as specified in their individual educational plan, which is an IEP. The SELPA budget and service plans will be brought to the board for adoption May 16, 2024. According to the governance and policy making process established within the Sierra Sands SELPA local plan for special education, completion of the process will be documented by evidence that a public hearing was held before the adoption of the annual budget plan and annual service plan. The district consulted with the state SELPA financial consultant to complete our budget plan. Financial implications. The special education services provided by Sierra Sands SELPA are supported through a combination of special education state and federal categorical funds, the expenditures of which is documented in these plans. Recommendation is recommendation that the board conduct a public hearing on the annual budget plan and annual service plan for the 24-25 school year.
The board will open the public hearing at 6:33. Does anyone wish to comment on the plan? Mr. Rockwell.
So this will come back to us for a vote at a later date? Is that-
Yes, May 16th, the next board meeting.
Okay.
So
I
this
guess,
is just public hearing.
should I make some comments now, or should I save them till then?
That is totally up to you, sir.
Well, since some of this stuff is fresh from our recent trip, I guess I'll ask a few questions now.
Sure.
So the projected budget for the SELPA is just shy of $16 million.
Correct.
And our projected revenue is somewhere 6.5-ish million dollars.
Correct.
Something like that. So a little less than $10 million delta between those two numbers. Where does that $10 million come from?
So it's local contribution. It's part of our general fund.
And the general fund is the funds that we use to basically run everything that we want to run outside of our mandated stuff, right? So,
Correct.
so if we are putting $10 million into the SELPA, we are taking $10 million away from potentially hiring more teachers, implementing more programs, those kinds of things.
These are funds that are needed to support our students that need them, and it's salaries too, salaries of our teachers that support those students as well. So
Yeah, and let me be clear, I'm not arguing that that there's anything wrong with the $16.9 million number. That we're spending what we have to spend to support our special needs kids. So that's not really my point. My point is that we are required to do things for our special needs students by the federal government, by, you know,
IDEA,
yeah.
Yes.
So IDEA is the big one.
correct?
And, you know, the point I'm trying to make is, IDEA is a law that has been on the books since 1974, something like
Correct.
that.
Around there?
And the intent of IDEA was to provide 40% of something. I don't know if it really is 40% of this.
So the need. So, yeah, yes, so
Yeah.
you're correct.
So 40% of the $16.5 million. And looks like at the moment, the federal government is actually providing about 7% of what we need.
Correct. And the state of California provides about 34%.
Right, right. So, I guess the biggest thing for me is the delta for the feds, from 7% to 40% is, you know, $5 or $6 million, right? So it's not a small number. It would make a big difference to our district if we could, get that money. So for those of you in the audience, if you have any friends in Congress or in the Senate, there are two bills floating around out there right now. In the House, it's H.R. 4519, and it's in the Senate, it's Senate 2217. And these are bills that are that intend to get the federal government from where they are today, which is a pittance of what they suggested they were going to provide, to the 40% number. And I think what's attractive about what's being pushed through at the moment is that this isn't a, hey, federal government, go from 7% to 40% tomorrow, but it provides a kind of a 10-year ramp for getting there. And so it's not as violent an upswing as maybe some people would like it to be, but it's a path. And you know, to me, that ought to make it a lot more palatable than trying to go from our 7% to 40% in a year or two. So any encouragement that people can make, you know, there are decisions that we can make that impact our ability to run the district and to help our kids. This is not one of those. This is not something we can do. So Congress has to do it. And so if there's anything anybody can do to help push their congressman around here as soon as we have one, we really need the help. So I guess that's my thought.
And if I could make a couple of comments from my perspective that, and Paul, I really appreciate your presentation here, and I think it's important for us to understand that this is the cost of what we need to be providing for our students, and we need to absolutely approve this cost, and that we're presenting this now to the public just to understand how this shakes out and how the numbers shake out. And I think maybe what may not be clear to everyone is that when the federal government established IDEA and they established the requirements, they made a promise that they would fund 40%. And if you look at our chart here, they're funding 7%. And that's the difference that Kurt is talking about. We should be receiving the 40%. But because we're not, it means there's about $6 million that we're taking from other portions of our budget, which we would be able to use in many other ways, providing educational services for our kids. So what's important to me is that we highlight that to the decision makers to understand, look, there's this gap from when you created the obligation, and it's a worthy obligation. It's important services we're providing for students. You also made a promise that this is how much you would pay and we'd pay the rest. And that's not happening. So we need to make sure we take every opportunity we can to, and there are these two bills that are out there. And at a later time, in our under board member presentations, I'd like to make some comments on that. But I think to me right now, it's important that we identify exactly what these numbers are, have them stick in our mind, so that when we get to that later part, we can understand the value of what other kinds of work we need to do as a board on behalf of our students in our district.
Yeah, and if I could just add, in May, I will be up at Sacramento, and we are lobbying to not lose the 40% of you're speaking of. 7% is coming for our federal government, and 34% is coming from the state of California. If we do, what we would call fully funded would never be fully funded. But we do not want to lose that 34% from the state of California. And so that's our SELPA mission, and that's what we do. So we go up there and we represent our students that can't represent themselves, and we ensure that they get the services they need, and some of those services are difficult to provide, right? Because our students have very different needs and some difficult needs too. So we want to ensure that they get an education, because those of us that were here before 1972 realized they were not included in school, right? They were not. It was not federally mandated, and most districts did not have them. So from where we've come there to right now is just the most incredible thing to see students integrated at our schools and all around. And there's way more work to do, and we'll continue to do that work on a daily basis. We want our students included in everything. So, it's one thing for the federal government to say they're going to pick up the 40%, but it's another thing to make sure that the state of California doesn't say, hey, that's the portion that we were giving. So we want to make sure that that 34% is continuing from the state of California. And the state of California has said, as of right now, CDE has said they're going to continue that. So that would bring us up to almost 74% of our budget would be taken care of from federal and state funds, which would be incredible, because this is not something that Sierra's hands. This is every district in the state of California and across the United States is dealing with these problems too. So,
Thank you.
And I do want to be clear, I'm a big fan of our SELPA. I mean, we do a great job given the hand that we're dealt, and in no way were my comments in any way demeaning to our SELPA or anybody running the SELPA, because I think that's all great. My point was 100% about we should be getting more money from the feds. And if we had more money from the feds, then we could do more with the money.
and they were not taking anything up to, all of us should be lobbying for our students that need those that can't talk, right? And those that can't speak, and those that can't advocate for themselves. That's what we do.
Any other questions or comments from board members, or any questions from the public on this item? If not, we will close the public hearing, and we will move back to our agenda and reports and communications. Item 1, student members report. Brody.
From Murray Middle School. This month, Murray has had tons of exciting events happening as the end of the school year quickly approaches. This past week, we had our Touch of Class luncheon, which had tons of amazing food made by our amazing kitchen staff. Past ASB members and other special guests got to enjoy a fancy lunch set up and run by our current ASB. Each guest got to choose from a couple different options, including Frank Sinatra pizza, Elvis Presley peanut butter and banana sandwich, and James Dean pizza. All 3 dishes also came with the Audrey Hepburn chocolate cake with peanut butter frosting to match our theme of classic Hollywood. Not only did special guests get this meal, but students also got to choose one of these for lunch. On April 12th, we had our Touch of Class dance with the same theme of classic Hollywood. Students got to dress up in fancy dress attire and have a night of fun. Murray had a successful open house on April 16th, which included our annual Scholastic Book Fair. This also included students' History Day projects where they got to show off one thing they learned this year in their history classes. Open House also gave an opportunity for families of 8th graders to talk to our counselors about the transition to high school. Our counselors are doing an amazing job assisting students with elective choices and other hard choices they are having to make in preparation for high school. On Wednesday, April 17th, ASB had a meeting to kick off the ASB election for next year's student body. During this meeting, they discussed all parts of the election, which included an application, teacher recommendations, campaigning, an interview with current ASB members, and a speech. We are so excited to see what the students will do for Murray next year. Select Murray students got to have a second meeting with the superintendent, Dr. Moore, this past Friday. Students were very happy to discuss issues and concerns they were having at the school, like not having a zero period next year, bullying, and lack of resources. Murray was the only school that got a follow-up meeting with the superintendent. The meeting went amazing, and the students are hoping to get to talk to Dr. Moore again soon. In the next few months, the 8th graders are going to be preparing for the transition to Burroughs High School. On April 17th, they got to go to the Burroughs campus and hear their band and orchestra play. They are also prepared for their promotion on May 30th at Kerr McGee. Our 8th grade teachers are trying to make this transition as smooth as possible. This month, we also got a surprise visit from Captain Vaughn, where he gave a motivational speech to our 8th graders. We would also like to congratulate our robotics team for winning the tournament championship this past weekend, with the score of the last match being 120 to 119. They will be traveling to Dallas, Texas on May 30th to compete in the World's Championship. Murray has had lots of opportunities to offer to their students that help expand their school life and experiences in many different ways. From Monroe Middle School. It's that time of year where the energy is on the rise, and you can see that at James Monroe. Our Tigers have been busy, that is for sure. We celebrated our success and good character for the third quarter. Each quarter, we have had more and more students showing their growth on IABs and IXL. Our orchestra performed a different piece at each grade level's assembly. They were awesome. The Tiger Music Department presented music in our schools to families and elementary schools in the district at that same time. We are so lucky to have such focus and support of the arts in our district, and especially our middle schools. Mr. Wanacott and Mrs. Olinger share their love of music every day with the young people of our community. They are true assets to our site. Our 2 students participating in the county science fair had a great time exploring the other projects and learning what the whole event entails. Thank you to Miss Stranger for her support of them all year. Everyone enjoyed a week to rest and relax their spring break, but we hit the ground running when we returned. Literally, our students ran like the wind at the Junior Olympics. There are multiple Tigers headed to Bakersfield for the county meet. Preparations for testing began in advisory. Students are getting practice and support with testing strategies, accommodations, and tools and resources. We should be ready to roll when testing begins on April 30th. Coming up, we have a campus beautification event, the spring dance, a young people's performance by the Desert Community Orchestra, CASP testing, and all of the end-of-year festivities. We are looking forward to celebrating all the successes of the school year and our Tiger team. From Mesquite, since the last board report, we have graduated 4 more students, bringing our total to 23 for the year, and we are excited to see a final push as we finish our year. Our spring fling to celebrate the third quarter graduates was a great success, and several recent graduates even made an appearance to inspire their friends. Last month's museum field trip was enlightening, as students learned about the engineering efforts used to deploy the James Webb's Deep Space Telescope. Last week, students also got to have their annual prom and had a great time as they danced the night away at the historic USO building. Fundraisers helped provide a photo booth, DJ, and supplement the cost of the venue. At this week's award assembly, we recognized honor roll, perfect attendance, dragon gems, and 30 more and out the door t-shirt earners for students with less than 30 credits remaining. Students engaged in another ASVAB opportunity, and we had several more join a military service. At the end of the month, students will begin state testing, so our juniors will be in the spotlight. Early indicators are good since in the last quarter, students increased credit earnings by 50% over the course of the year. In addition, students reviewed their first credit check and goals this week to help them recalibrate their efforts for the end of the year. Go Dragons and show them how to soar. And from Burroughs. April has been a productive month for Burroughs so far, and we look forward to even more as the month wraps up. Students enjoyed their week off during spring break, with many traveling with family and friends to enjoy the warmer weather. Last month, before the break, we had our superintendent come in to seek student help in defining the portrait of a graduate. Students were tasked with expressing their opinions on what skills a hypothetical graduate should have upon leaving high school. It was also an opportunity for students to discuss the curriculum and ask questions about the district. A graduation meeting was held last month on the 18th, with all seniors and preparations for graduation are underway. Our juniors and seniors are also looking forward to prom on April 27th, held at Kerr McGee Center, and the theme is Elegance on the Avenue. Those enrolled in the biology courses were able to participate in the annual March Mammal Madness, which sets a bracket of several animals to compete and attempt to come out on top. We had 3 spirit days this month: autism awareness on the 5th, where students wore blue, farmer versus farm animal on the 12th to support the play, and Military Kids Day yesterday, where students wore purple. Along with our Autism Awareness Day, on Saturday, April 6th, many people came to our football field to participate in the Autism Awareness Walk, and it had a great turnout. Speaking of the play, drama held 4 performances of the spring production Charlotte's Web. The play was a big success. In other performing arts news, our orchestra and chamber orchestra went to Fresno on the 10th to perform in front of CMEA judges. Both groups were awarded with unanimous superior ratings, the highest award given to an orchestra. On the 11th, the Hoshin Blood Bank came to Burroughs for our spring blood drive. Many students and staff came and donated valuable blood to help save lives. We donated 43 units, helping to save 129 lives in our community. ASB elections took place on the 12th. Numerous students participated as candidates, achieving success at the polls. We extend a warm welcome to our newly elected ASB class for the 2024-2025 school year. CASP English Language Arts testing for juniors was held this week on Tuesday and today, and CASP testing for math and science will be on the 23rd and 25th. In sports, boys tennis is currently 2nd in league. Our baseball and softball teams had games yesterday and earlier this week and are playing very well. Our golf and swim teams are also doing very well. In track, Joseph Bouchon became a school record holder as the first vaulter in Burroughs history to vault 14 feet. And finally, our girls track athletes beat Oat Hills for the first time and became Mojave River League champions for the first time on Tuesday, beating Serrano by 2 points.
Thank you, Brody. We next move to reports from members of the board. Board members have anything like to report? Mr. Scott?
On Monday, myself and the rest of the board attended the Purple Star celebration at Richmond. Outstanding event. Mr. Yancey, I want to thank you and your staff. I know that the event would not have been possible without the hard work from your staff. Had some great news coverage. Saw some of the videos on the Bakersfield News. They did a great job putting that all together, and just thanks for everything you guys have done.
I got to tell you, Mrs. Poole, Charlotte's Web, enjoyed it. Wilbur and the rat, that, I'm telling you. Awesome job. I really enjoyed that. And Murray, it was kind of interesting. I got to go to Murray for open house, and 2 of my students were teachers there. And I thought, dang. Mr. Wadley and Mr. Schomacher. So that was cool. And then I got to go check out the robotics. So thank you for that. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, the Purple Star celebration was awesome. And Mr. Ferris will probably talk more about it, but we had the ability to go back to DC last week as part of CSBA's Coast to Coast event, where school board members and superintendents from all over California descended upon the Capitol and went out and met with all kinds of congressmen and senators, and it was a really good event. I think really well organized. We were well educated on the issues before we met with our congressmen, and I'll just speak on one of the topics so you can cover the rest. I mentioned HR 4519. Until sometime in May, we'll probably not have a representative in the House of Representatives from our local area. So we weren't able to meet with an empty chair. But there is a small piece of our community that is covered by Congressman Jay Obernolte, and so we joined that delegation, and we were able to meet with him. And I mentioned HR 4519, the HR Act to fully fund the IDEA, and based on our meeting with him, he agreed to sign on as a co-sponsor of that bill, which is really important because right now there were 20 Democrats that were co-sponsors and 1 Republican. So if he signs on, he'll be the second Republican. So I haven't checked to see if he put his money where his mouth is yet, but there are a lot of people at CSBA that are going to keep hounding him until he does do what he said he would do. So we'll see how that goes. But great event, and I'm thinking we actually did make some headway. Thanks.
I just want to make a couple comments, and I do think, as we all know, this is an exciting time of year and a lot going on, and I would echo your comments about the Purple Star celebration and the Charlotte's Web. I thought Charlotte's Web was touching and very sweet and very entertaining. So congratulations for that performance. Also, we know that a lot of year-end performances in the arts, we want to support those. We have a lot going on in our community. A lot of folks have worked very hard. It's good to recognize what's happening. I did want to just take a moment to discuss with the rest of the board about, we've identified that an important role that we have as a Board of Education is to advocate. And I think the conversation we were having earlier to identify those line items in the SELPA budget was important for this reason, that we understand just exactly how important it is that we maintain that role. And I appreciate the fact that the board sent Kurt and I to that event. We did have an opportunity to meet with Congressman Obernolte. And what we're looking at, we have to understand that a delta of potentially $6 million for this community. As a board, we sit down at the end of the day and review the budget we have coming in and decide where we're going to divvy it up. But in the end, the amount that we really have to work with is pretty small. There are so many decisions that are already made for us. But if we can affect potentially a $6 million increase in our operational budget by providing that kind of influence on the decision makers, and we're not talking about making a commitment to more money than has already been promised. We're really talking about following through on a promise that's already been made. So I appreciate, Kurt, you're calling out Mr. Oldernolte's commitment. I will tell you that I read that commitment a little more couched than you may have. And I'm not sure it was quite as firm as what you came away with, but I'm hopeful.
I think what I would say, I thought what he said was that, yes, he said, yes, I'll sign. But what he was very clear about is it's an authorization bill.
Right.
So what it does is it says, is what he's basically saying is, hey, Congress, we should fund this. But there's no dollars attached with that until it goes through the Appropriations Committee. And the Appropriations Committee decides where the money goes. So while it's not an empty thing that he does when he says he'll co-sponsor that bill, it's also not a big risk for him because he doesn't, it's like he said, he's not saying spend the money. He's saying it'd be a good idea if we spent the money.
A step in the right direction, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right. But, the more people you can sign on to that bill, the more likelihood the appropriators will,
And I
take
think
it seriously.
And I appreciate that. And I think to me, the important thing is that we do recognize that particular part of our job as a board and as board members is critical. And I think we need to continue supporting that role and continue recognizing that role so that we not only do it at the federal level, because as Mr. Delbeck said, without pressure in the right place, the state could conclude, if we got that 40% from the feds, they could say, great, now we're going to reduce our contribution to 20%. So we need to always have that pressure in the appropriate places. And I believe the pressure from us as elected officials is probably the strongest that can happen. And so we need to recognize that when we interact with our federal legislators and our state legislators to help develop the understanding that says we are elected at our community to represent our needs and meet the educational requirements in our community. We would encourage you to use us as a resource when you're making those decisions to understand how that really happens in our communities. And I just want to kind of implore the board to make sure we understand that moving forward, how important that role is as we take our responsibility as board members. Any other comments from members of the board? If not, we will let Dr. Moore take the superintendent's report.
All right, thank you, President Ferris. It's been a while. It's a little over a month since our last board meeting, and a lot has happened. Our month 7 enrollment is 5,037 students, so just down 16 from this time last year. Attendance is holding well at 90%, which is, again, that testament to our staff diligence and the families getting their students to school to learn. And I will say that we're working with students and families to persevere, which is the Capturing Kids' Hearts theme of the month. Finish strong, persevere, we can do this together. Since the last board meeting, we held a number of Portrait of a Graduate student forums, staff meetings, and community forums. And we're in the process of tabulating the data and look forward to drafting our district Portrait of a Graduate based on that important input. I've also had the opportunity to support AB 2019, our state bill, to open access to dual enrollment flexibility, which is specifically related to our proposed middle college high school program. And I've had that opportunity to present to Assembly legislative committees in Sacramento. So far, we've seen unanimous support from both the Higher Ed Committee and the Committee on Education, so we're encouraged on that point. Our students experienced the eclipse on April 8th, and all elementary schools received eclipse glasses for safe viewing. This was a unique opportunity to experience science in action, and our schools and teachers capitalized on that learning experience for our students. I enjoyed attending the Junior Olympics last Saturday and was impressed with the turnout and the community volunteerism and support of our student athletes and those of the surrounding communities. And my husband and I also particularly enjoyed attending the spring play that's been mentioned several times, Charlotte's Web. The cast did a great job, and congratulations to Ms. Poole on the leadership of the drama team. I would also add, he's very humble, but Brody Zaid has been elected again to a second term as our student board member, and that vote has been confirmed. So we look forward to continuing to work with Brody, and thank you for stepping up to continue in that role. Next year will look a little bit different since we did change our policy, so not only does he have to be elected by his peers, he'll have that preferential vote, a lot more access, and some more things as we move into our new policy more fully next year, so that's exciting. And on the agenda, it's kind of hidden in that consent agenda, but we've talked about it several times. We do have Murray Robotics headed to the VEX World Championships, so just want to call that out and thank the community for their incredible support, financial and otherwise, of the great work that our students and the staff are doing. I am looking forward to continuing our dialogue with the community around our priorities as we expand our Join the Conversation outreach. There'll be some postcards coming up. We sent out a survey today, and we have a website button where anyone can contribute and help to continue that conversation. We do encourage all community and our SSUSD families to share perspectives on several important issues, specifically some facility issues we're looking at feedback on right now, as well as throughout the year. We have a Let's Talk tab for any and all feedback. We're always open and looking for that. So thank you, and that concludes my report.
Thank you. That brings us to item 4, report to the Board of Trustees by the Desert Area Teachers Association.
Good evening, Superintendent Moore, President Ferris, board members, community. And I'm gonna say this with a lot of respect, but when I get introduced to the PAC, there's a lot of applause, so this is a bit of a letdown. I'm just gonna say that. Thank you, thank you. see.
We are often told we're a letdown, just for the record.
Now you know how it feels.
The show was really good. I was like pleased, and I'm pretty critical, and I thought it was fabulous, so. There's no public comments on that. I thought I'd throw that in. Okay, so let's see, where to begin? Testing is happening at Burroughs. We just got through the English testing. It's my least favorite time of year, not because of my personal feelings about testing, but because it's so boring. I have to stand there quietly, and I'm not cut out that way. But we got through it, and I always love the way the staff comes together and really gets it done. So that's great. And the kids are. It wasn't my class, and the kids are great. So that was good. I also think it's very interesting that we do. I think sophomores get a practice test, and then juniors have 2, and that's it. And I don't want to brag as an English teacher, but English always does really well. So we do very little testing, and our kids do very, very well. Could we do better? Sure, always. We're always striving for that, but I don't know, maybe there's something to less testing and good results. A lot of talk, so I was just going to bring up one more time that since there's all this stuff about the magnet schools, that as we move forward, it's really easy to get excited, and I'm guilty of this, always in the middle of a play. I'm like, what am I doing for the next one? Because kind of the drudgery, right? The work that you really have to do to get it done. So I just am hoping that as we go through and we see all these pretty flashing lights, that we keep in mind that at the end of the day, regardless of what the school is, and you brought this up, I heard that for sure, that at the end of the day, it's teachers teaching kids, right? And we do it because we like it. But it is a job. And I come up here probably every month and say, we work really hard, and don't you forget it. But I wanted to tell you that this month, I have sources to cite. So pretty excited. The NEA did a survey, and I think it went through, I had it all set up and then I tossed my phone. And I think it was through the Pew Foundation. And they were pointing out, it's called What Teachers Want People to Know. I really had it here. So let me see, I think I took a picture of it. And I just wanted to point out, it's not just us. And as I say every time, you know, we teach, we enjoy it. I think everybody in here does, and I think we all have the common goals. It's just how we get there. So in April, the Pew survey found that 77% of teachers said their job was frequently stressful, and 68% it was overwhelming. Similarly, large numbers pointed to the lasting negative impact of the pandemic on student academic achievement, as well as student behavior and emotional well-being. Teachers at all grade levels report that their students continue to struggle with academic underperformance and behavior problems. 8 in 10 teachers say they must address students' behavioral issues at least a few times a week, with 58% saying this happens every day. So there's nothing in this survey that we don't know, right? We pay attention. And so it's certainly not limited to us, which in one way is makes us feel better. In another way, it's a little bit daunting, right? Because it's not like we can just move somewhere else and say, oh, we'll borrow what that district is doing. So it's a huge problem in all of society. And I just wanted to point that out because I saw this NEA survey in my mail, I think, yesterday. And then when I talked to my colleagues, we're all very supportive of the Capturing Kids' Hearts. We like that. And I think we really need to keep focusing on that and really commit to that and doing it on a regular basis. And we are, the teachers are, and that the district really stays focused, that we stay on that program, because I think really it's going to take years, right, to see how it really impacts us. And I've talked to teachers, and they're newer to the profession than I am. And they're feeling that sense of being overwhelmed. And it always surprises me, because, like, please, I'm old, I'm supposed to be tired, but it kind of surprises me, and we don't want to lose that, right? We don't want to lose the new people coming in because they have great ideas, and we like to have that. So I just want to make sure that we stay focused on that. So that's really all I have until we talk about the next play, which will be in October.
Thank you. That brings us to item 5, reports to the Board of Trustees by the California School Employees Association.
Hello, School Board President, Board members, Superintendent Dr. Moore, and community. During our monthly meeting, it was discussed that the classified staff have been working out of class, taking on more responsibilities than normal due to the fact that we are so shorthanded. Once again, I ask myself why. Why are we so shorthanded? The pay. A lot of people are complaining that fast food workers are making more money than them. People who have worked for the district for years make less than someone at McDonald's. They are questioning why work for the district when they can go flip burgers and not get chairs thrown at them, bit, hit, and or kicked, cussed out with little to no support from their admin. Years ago, working for the district was a job everyone wanted because at the time, the pay was competitive with other places in town and the benefits were good. Now, looking at our pay, we are not even competitive with fast food. Our benefits are okay, but only for those who are full-time employees. It's often brought up that we need to look at total compensation, but having roughly 350 classified employees and only about 140 who are full-time with benefits, total compensation doesn't really apply to more than half of the classified employees. We have been contracting out a lot of jobs, and all I can say is that it continues to infuriate the classified staff. Why can we not fill these positions instead of contracting out? It's because, again, the pay. Well, we have begun negotiations, and we're hoping to improve our pay scale in the hopes of getting more people to want to come and work for the district. We need our classified jobs filled with permanent employees and not contractors. Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to item 5, reports to the Board of Trustees, item 6, communications from the public. And the board will provide time during the discussion of each agenda item for members of the public to comment. At this time, members of the public may address the board on items that are not on the agenda. Comments should relate to items of public interest within the board's jurisdiction. The law provides the board, prohibits the board from taking action on items that are not on the agenda, but if appropriate, your comments will be referred to staff for response. When addressing the board, please state your name at the microphone here and limit your remarks to 3 minutes. In accordance with the board bylaws, the board will limit the total time for public input to 30 minutes. Those wishing to address the board beyond that 30 minutes may address the board at the end of the board regular scheduled board meeting. If we have anyone that would like to address the board tonight? If not, we will move on to Educational Administration, 6.1, approval of 24-25 Association of Supervision and Curriculum Development Agreement. Ms. Decker.
Good evening, President Ferris, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Moore, staff and community. The Local Control Funding Formula, or LCFF Equity Multiplier Funds, are additional funds provided to school sites based on the prior year non-stability rates greater than 25% and the prior year socioeconomically disadvantaged pupil rates greater than 70%. The additional funding is to be used to provide evidence-based services and support to improve student outcomes in the LCAP. Mesquite and Pierce will be receiving these funds next year. The identified areas of need for Pierce include CASP ELA performance for low-income and Hispanic student groups, and suspension rates for low-income, African-American, and white students. Focus goals are required in the 2024 to 27 LCAP to address the state priorities of student achievement and social climate. The Pierce staff would like to continue their work with the ASCD coaches that was started this year under the Comprehensive Support and Improvement System. The continued coaching will address both student achievement and the school climate. The ASCD contract includes 42 days of on-site coaching, 3 days each month beginning in August and ending in April for the 24-25 school year. The total cost is $315,000. Pierce will be receiving approximately $409,000 in the LCFF Equity Multiplier Funds, which will fully cover the cost. It is recommended the board approve the ASCD agreement as presented.
Move recommended action.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments from board members on this item? Any questions or comments from members of the public? Staff? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you, Ms. Decker. Brings us to item 2, approval of contract with Judge Rottenberg Educational Center for provision of educational instruction, room and board, and related mental health services. Mr. Delbeck.
President Ferris, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Moore, and members of our community. Approval of a contract with Judge Rottenberg Educational Center for provision of educational instruction, room and board, and related mental health services. Background information: the term free and appropriate public education, or FAPE, means special education and related services have been provided at public expense under supervision and direction and without charge, met the standard of state educational agency, and include appropriate preschool, elementary school, or secondary education in the state involved, are provided in conformity with the IEP program required under Section 614D. Under the regulations implemented the IDEA, or Individuals with Disability Education Act, each public agency must ensure that a continuum of alternative placements is available to meet the needs of children with disabilities for special education and related services. That continuum must include: 1, include alternative placements listed under the definition of special education under Section 300.38, instruction in regular classes, special schools, home instruction, and instruction in hospitals and institution, and make provision for supplementary services such as resource room or itinerant instruction to be provided in conjunction with regular class placement. The IDEA provides private school students and states that children placed in or referred to private schools by school districts are provided special education and related services in accordance with an IEP program at no cost to parents. The regulations implemented the IDEA also include provisions related to students placed in residential treatment facilities. Specifically, the regulations provide that if a placement in a public or private residential program is necessary to provide special education related services to a student with a disability, the program, including non-medical care and room and board, must be at no cost to the parents of the child. On 12/3/2023, the IEP team held a plan review IEP, and at that meeting, a multidisciplinary report was presented by our psychologist that recommended a more restrictive environment, specifically a residential treatment center for the student. The IEP team agreed, and the district continued to pursue placement at a residential center for the student. After applying to numerous RTCs and not being accepted, the student was accepted at the Judge Rottenberg Center in Massachusetts. At the time of acceptance, the district was told there was a 6 to 12-month waiting list for placement at the Judge Rottenberg Center. On or around March 1st, 2024, a spot opened up at the Judge Rottenberg Center. The IEP team met on 3/12/24 and made the decision to place the student at the Judge Rottenberg Center starting 3/28/24, as that was the least restrictive environment for the student. The district flew with the student and parent, and the student started at the Judge Rottenberg Center on 3/28/24. Financial implications: the contract for the period of March 28th, 2024 to June 30th, 2024 is not to exceed the amount of $115,731.85, which includes both tuition and one-to-one support staff. It's recommended that the board approve the contract with the Judge Rottenberg Center as presented.
Move the recommended action.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Mr. Scott seconds. Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Well, first, how's it going at this facility? Are things?
We have monthly debriefings. I was able to spend 3 days there, and the 3 days there were interesting for me. The student is getting acclimated. We have our debriefing tomorrow. That will be our first month breathing. But I've received pictures and updates, and student seems to be getting used to the environment.
And Dr. Moore, we have 5,037 students. How much money do we get per student on average?
It varies depending on the group that they're in, but generally 20-some thousand.
So, and based on $115,000 for 3 months, that's about a $350,000 bill for a single student for a year, compared to the $20,000 we get per student. So just another example, tonight's my night to beat on the low funding of the IDEA. You know, that supporting all of our students to the level that they need to be is expensive. And, you know, if we get $20,000 for a student and spend $350,000 on them, then they're, you know, that's just one of the many challenges that we have, but it's a significant one that, again, call your congressman, HR 4519, please. So, thanks.
Any other questions or comments?
So in your meeting, you're talking about changing their name?
What's that?
You're gonna talk to them about changing their name? Doesn't it sound like a court commitment or something?
It does.
It does. It's just-
It was
when I
a,
first saw it the first time I had, what?
So there was a very philanthropic judge who, that's his name, and that's what he gave a lot of money to students with high needs, and eventually opened a center, and the center is very well known throughout the United States. But yeah, it does sound like it.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments?
No.
Any questions or comments from members of the public? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Brings us to Personnel Administration, 8.1, presentation of initial sunshine contract proposal from the Board of Education to the Desert Area Guidance Association for the 24-25 school year. Mr. Auld.
President Ferris, members of the board, Superintendent Dr. Moore, faculty and community. The Board of Education will submit its initial sunshine contract proposal for the 2024-25 school year to the Desert Area Guidance Association at the regular board meeting. We've actually already transmitted that. It's in the packet. Financial implications are unknown, and it is recommended that the board present the initial sunshine contract as presented.
Move recommended action.
Second.
Been moved and second. Any questions or comments from board members?
Yeah, I think we should do what we already did.
Makes sense to me. Any questions or comments from members of the public? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? It is unanimous. Brings us to item 2, presentation of initial sunshine contract proposal for the 24-25 school year from the Desert Area Teachers Association to the Board of Education.
Again, the sunshine has already been received. It's in the board packet. The Desert Area Teachers Association will submit its initial sunshine contract proposal for the 24-25 school year to the Board of Education. Financial implications are unknown, and it is recommended that the board receive the initial sunshine contract as presented.
Move the recommended action.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments from board members? Questions or comments from members of the public, staff? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Bringing us to item 3, approval of memorandum of understanding with Inyo County SELPA. Mr. Auld.
So as we know well in our community, as it is around the state, there is difficulty in recruiting highly qualified individuals, and that's especially true where you have specialists. And it's even more difficult for our neighbors to the north as you go down the 395 corridor. So the Lone Pine Unified School District belongs to the Inyo County SELPA. Lone Pine has not been able to recruit and retain a district nurse for, I think, close to 2 years at this point. Therefore, Lone Pine students have not received critical services such as hearing and vision screenings in that time. In addition, they have not had a district nurse available to serve as a member of an IEP team where critical health guidance is necessary. In an effort to provide support to Lone Pine students, the district and the Inyo County SELPA have tentatively agreed to an MOU describing a contractor service agreement. In this agreement, the district agrees to provide a registered nurse for 7.25 hours a day on 2 pre-selected days a month. The RN will conduct hearing and vision screenings, provide equipment necessary for hearing and vision assessments, and provide health updates for IEPs. Lone Pine Unified will pay $2,000 per day, 2 days a month for these services. There are no financial implications, and it is recommended that the board approve this MOU with the Inyo County SELPA.
Move the recommended action.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments from board members? Kurt?
Yeah, so there's no financial implications, but there's time implications. That means we've got 2 days a month where we'll have nurses out of the district. Are we covered?
Yeah, so we negotiated with with data regarding the working conditions. They rotate, but that is true. There are 2 days per month where one of our nurses will be in Lone Pine.
And before we even entertained this possibility, the conversation with the nurses, they were very supportive and believed that we could have sufficient coverage if we were to do this, because it's such a limited outgoing of our staff.
Okay, great, thank you.
Any other questions or comments from board members? Questions or comments, members of the public, staff? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Brings us to item 4, revised job description, budget analyst.
The Chief Financial Officer retired as of January 31st, 2024, and the former budget analyst has been selected to fill the Director of Finance and Budget position. The CFO position will not be filled at this time. After thorough review of the current job description, it was determined that some very minor changes needed to be made. A copy of the revised job description with the proposed additions emphasized in red font and the deleted language stricken is included in the board packet for review. There are no financial implications. It's recommended that the board approve the revised job description for the budget analyst position as presented.
Move to recommend action.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments from board members on this item? Questions or comments from members of the public, staff? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Brings us to item 5, revised job description for Director of Facilities.
So the board approved a new classified management position, Director of Facilities, during the regular board meeting in January of this year. Since approval, it has been determined that the Director of Facilities will supervise the Director of Maintenance and Operations, but will not supervise the Director of Construction. The revised job description is included in the board packet, and changes are noted in red font. There are no financial implications. It's recommended that the board approve the revisions to the classified management position, Director of Facilities, as presented.
Move the recommended action.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments from board members? Kurt?
I guess the only question I have is, what's the rationale for having a person supervise one facilities director but not the other?
Our facilities director, well, it's maintenance and operations, is at a significantly different level than the director of construction. And the director of construction is actually equivalent to this position.
Okay.
So they're actually at the same rank. And basically, we realized that doesn't make sense. Plus, there's going to be some cross-training involved from current expert staff. And so it seemed a little bit awkward. So we realized that we needed to revise that.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Questions or comments from members of the public, staff? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Brings us to item 6, adoption of resolution number 22, 23, 24, Teacher Appreciation Week and Day of the Teacher. Mr. Auld.
So each May, certificated employees throughout California are recognized for their service to students and the educational community. Resolution number 22 declares the week of May 6th through the 10th, 2024 as Teacher Appreciation Week in Sierra Sands Unified School District. The resolution also designates May 7, 2024 as National Teacher Day and May 8, 2024 as the California Day of the Teacher. Adoption of this resolution designates a time when administrators, staff, parents, students, and the community have an opportunity to recognize and salute district teachers and their many contributions to our students' success. A copy of resolution number 22 will be displayed at all district schools and sites. It's recommended that the board adopt resolution number 22 as presented.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments from board members? Questions or comments from members of the public? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Item 7, adoption of resolution 23-24, Classified School Employees Week.
Again, in every May, classified employees throughout California are recognized for their services to students in the educational community. Resolution 23 declares the week of May 19th through 25th, 2024 as Classified School Employee Week in Sierra Sands Unified School District. Adoption of this resolution provides an opportunity for administrators, staff, parents, students, and the community to recognize the many accomplishments and contributions of our classified staff. A copy of Resolution 23 will be displayed at all district schools and sites, and it is recommended that the board adopt Resolution 23 as presented.
Move recommended action.
Second?
Been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments from board members? Questions or comments from members of the public? All in favor say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Item 8, report to the board on the quarterly report of the Williams uniform complaint.
President Ferris, since there's no findings, I recommend we just accept.
I concur.
Moved and seconded to accept the report. Any questions or comments from board members?
We don't even have to.
Questions or comments from members of the public? Has been received.
Unless Mr. All really wants to talk about it.
Yeah.
Moves us to item 9, general administration, gifts to the district.
The following gifts were received. Cheryl and Dan Warren made a cash donation of $1,200 to be used for extracurricular activities and supplies at Inyo Kern Elementary School. The VFW Auxiliary 4084 made a cash donation of $100 to be used by the Adult Transition Program at Burroughs High School. And the China Lake Rotary made a cash donation of $20 to be used by Student Support Services. Donations provide support to the district and have a positive financial impact. I move that we accept the gifts as described and send appropriate letters of appreciation.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments? Questions or comments from members of the public? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? It is unanimous. Brings us to adoption of the board meeting calendar for 24-25 school year.
Thank you. At this time of our agenda, we usually approve next year's board meeting dates, the monthly regularly scheduled meetings, and we may add additional special or workshop style meetings as needed. In general, these are the third Thursday of each month with several exceptions, notably March, where we usually move it to the second, and that is the case here to meet certain timelines, as well as June. We have proposed that we do it on the second Thursday of June rather than the third. It gets a little bit late in June. The way we currently have it structured with folks leaving for summer break and such activities. We have checked with both our business office and our education services team that do the critical budget and LCAP reports, and we believe that our planning and timeline will be conducive to that date if that is agreeable, but happy to discuss or answer any questions.
Move the recommended action.
What,
Second.
what date is
It's
that?
been moved and seconded. The 12th of June is the June shift.
Okay, to the 12th?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay.
I'm surprised that you would consider the fact that people would want to go on vacation be more entertaining than staying longer and going to a board meeting, but, you know.
It is hard to comprehend, isn't it? Any other questions or comments? Questions or comments from members of the public? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. Brings us to item 3, authorization for board member travel to the CSBA Delegate Assembly meeting.
Yes, as we know, Mr. Rockwell serves as a delegate for our CSBA region, and as such needs to go to Sacramento later in May And this would allow him to have his expenses covered. The budget that the board has allocated for such travel would amply cover this travel, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Do I have a motion to approve this?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments from board members? I would just comment, it looks like we're going to be within budget since we're wrapping up the year. And I just also want to comment once again that I believe this type of work is important that we do. It does take us outside of our district, but I believe in the long run, it gives us more flexibility with what we do in district in a way that doesn't otherwise happen, and I think that's really important. Any questions or comments from members of the public, staff? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed, it is unanimous. Brings us to item 10, Construction Administration, 10.1, Report to the Board on Construction Activities and Issues. Ms. Smith.
Good evening. Mr. Coit is taking a well-deserved vacation this week, and so I'm covering the construction status for him. Okay, and so first of all, we have the Richmond status. Building B is nearly complete. We're finishing the low voltage, and the ceiling grid is being installed in that building. Building A is having interior and exterior finishes completed. The mechanical systems have been completed. They're installing the interior sheetrock and tack board and doing some interior painting. Building C is having roofing installed, the mechanical and the low voltage. Buildings D and E are having the concrete poured for their foundations, and they will be the next set of buildings that will be delivered and assembled on the site. And in terms of the overall site work, the temporary power is now operational. Site concrete's in progress. They've started on light poles, fencing, pressure testing of the water system, fire lane paving, and off-site work. And the off-site work is mostly Gold Canyon.
Can you click the clicky thing?
I beg your pardon?
Can you click the little clicky thing?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not, I apologize. There, now I'm caught up. Thank you, Mr. Rockwell. So anyway, the off-site work is Gold Canyon and Richmond Road work that's being started. The scheduled completion date for that project is December of '24. The budget is on track, and we do have one risk with the project, which is electrical equipment has serious supply chain issues right now in this country. And we have tried all sorts of methods to try to get the electrical equipment expedited to no success right now. We have one, the switchgear for the site will not be delivered until November right now, which is pushing us very close to the end of the construction schedule. And that's our biggest risk with the project right now. So
I don't know if this is crazy or not, but have you since we are building these on Navy land, have you discussed these concerns with Captain Vaughn and company?
So we will be discussing them. So the DOD does have a way to expedite DOD contracts in terms of getting equipment moved to the top of the supply chain, but there are some pretty rigorous criteria. So we plan on talking to Captain Vaughn about that. I did ask DOD OLDCC if they would intervene on our behalf, and that's not something that they do. And then we did call directly the supplier, and I pretty much begged, and it was not very successful because what has happened with their process is there's some major drivers driving the shortage, increases in demand and limited components. And so about 2 weeks ago, basically a month ago, they reset 12,000 of their orders and put new delivery dates on them. And when I mentioned how important ours was, he said Amazon felt exactly the same.
I think I guess the crazy part of my thought was that, you know, we've for some of the earthquake construction on base, we've found that like Public Works had stuff in a yard somewhere that we were able to make work, and I don't, you know, colors of money and who spends what on what is, you know, maybe makes it completely ridiculous, but, you know, if we communicated to the base, what our need was, maybe we get lucky.
We could try. I did consider switching out the equipment for a different manufacturer. And apparently Square D is the company that we're talking about, and they have a very proprietary configuration for this switchgear. And there would be some significant redesign of our electrical systems if we were to switch out gear that does not meet this particular specification.
Yeah.
And
no,
so I don't know if
get
there's
it.
stuff laying around in the yard that might meet that specification, but we can ask,
I mean, doesn't hurt to ask, yeah.
so.
And if I understand it, this has been a long time issue. This is not new.
It's
right?
been on our, it's been on our risk since the beginning of the, well, relatively, as soon as the electrical contractor came on board. One of the
But
problems
this shortage
is,
is multi-year, right?
Well, it is, and we've had this problem on the base and all the, like,
That's
the
what it is.
earthquake recovery, construction, it's been a huge impact.
Yeah, but US Navy is a whole lot bigger customer than SSUSD.
Yep.
You never know, you get the right person with the right call.
we have asked the liaison to address it with Captain Bond, and we've documented the issue and the concerns to see if there's anything they can do just to leverage. But it probably wouldn't meet the criteria that the DPAS legislation requires.
Yeah, I can't
Yeah.
imagine that.
Yeah,
That,
so,
us meeting that kind of threshold is, that's never gonna happen. It's more of a, can we get lucky and does somebody have something we can get our hands on?
and we did consider, you know, could the school be run on temp power for any period of time in the event that that switchgear didn't make it? It's not a very great solution in terms of, I mean, you'd have generators, and, I mean, this is our biggest risk for the project right now.
You have a lot of big generators.
Yeah, big generators, diesel generators. Yeah, so, okay, so then, the Murray expansion project, we haven't really been briefing much about this. And so, Randy and I have agreed that it's probably time to start including this in the monthly status. I have a diagram right here. The yellow part is what is included in that project. It's basically the removal of 2 relocatables that we brought in when charter school quit serving 7th and 8th graders, and then putting in 9 additional classrooms. One of them is a special ed classroom, and then expanding parking. Right over on the right, that yellow part is a lot of dirt that's used for parking, and we would like to make that asphalt parking and double basically the parking at Murray. We will also be increasing some locker room storage in the existing locker room, and then in a later phase, perhaps expanding the locker rooms in general because of the additional students. So design is in progress. We have the DSA fees paid, and they're getting ready to submit the design to DSA pre-check in May. The plan is to pull those 2 relocatables out in June over the summer and put additional lockers in the locker room next summer. And then construction would begin in September of '24. We're using a design bid build method where we hope that whatever vendor gets chosen to do the 9 classrooms will also do the site work and electrical and the permanent modular construction as a general contractor. We don't plan on doing CM over multi-prime for this project. The completion right now is estimated at September 25. There is a chance that can be backed into August for start of school, but that would be a very tight schedule. So there's a chance that there will be several weeks at the start of school that we're finishing up that project. And so that's where we're at right now. It's a very tight schedule.
Right, and we're working on some contingency plans, so they're never ideal, but the opportunity for teachers to rotate classrooms and such while their classrooms are being finalized. So we'll be working with staff as we move forward now that we have a clearer visual of that timeline to make sure that we have a plan to move forward.
Any questions on the Murray expansion? And then summer projects, we have several summer projects happening. We will be finally getting the fence around Fowler and the security gates installed. That's been a long time coming. There's actually an item next that talks to that. We will get those 2 TK classrooms installed that have been planned for Las Flores and Fowler. And then there are some minor asphalt repairs that need to be made to the bus yard. We got our paperwork for those 6 electric buses, and they're estimating a 90-day delivery, so we will probably have those electric buses in play for fall of next year, which is kind of exciting. Any questions on construction?
Thank you so much for that report. This is item 2, approval of agreement with Alta Fencing Company for fencing at Fowler Elementary.
Yep, and as I mentioned, we have planned to put fencing in front of the multipurpose and then around where the parent drop-off is at Fowler to enclose that space. We received 2 bids for the project, and Alta Fencing was selected as the lowest responsive bidder. The cost for that project is $246,810, and it will be paid for out of Fund 40. And we recommend that you approve an agreement with Alta Fencing for the fencing at Fowler as presented.
Move recommended action.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments from board members?
Just a comment, I truly appreciate the, when you put the Colombo recommendation, it's always nice, because I have no idea how much fencing is, and it's just nice to have a professional, double check and let us know that the project is normal rates.
We thought San Joaquin would get that, to be perfectly frank, because they're already on site for Richmond, and they got way under bid.
I've heard of San Joaquin before, I've never heard of,
Yeah,
so I
we
don't
were-
know if it's a new upcoming, so.
Yeah, it was a surprise, but, yeah.
Appreciate that comment, Mike, because I don't know about you, but when I see some of these numbers and I think, wait,
Yeah.
that's $250,000. We're talking fence? So it certainly is educational.
Yeah, I want to go into the fencing
Yeah.
business. I want to go into the playground business.
Yeah.
I wanna- it's just,
Yeah, I'm betting it's not all what it looks like, right?
probably not.
Okay, I have a motion and a... Okay. Any other questions or discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Brings us item 3, adoption of resolution number 242324 to enter into an agreement with Dave Bang Associates Incorporated for the purchase of playground equipment for the new Richmond Elementary School pursuant to the government, the One Government Procurement Alliance piggyback contract number 2307P-03.
Yes, and basically this verbiage and the resolution allow us to use that piggyback method rather than going out and bidding this equipment. This ends up being most of the play equipment for the Richmond project. There will be one other item that gets brought next month for a few other pieces of equipment. Covers all of the play areas. Total cost of this is $1,090,538.32, and it will be funded 80% by the grant and 20% by Fund 40. It's recommended that the board adopt this resolution so that we can enter the agreement with Dave Bang for the playground equipment at the new Richmond Elementary School.
Move recommend action.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments from board members? Questions or comments from members of the public? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous.
Sorry.
Brings us to business administration. 11.1, acceptance of the 22-23 audit report for the Sierra Sands Unified School District. Ms. Smith.
So in accordance with Ed Code 35145 and 4120, the district must conduct an annual audit and report the findings of that audit to the board. The audit report has been prepared by the auditing firm of Eide Bailey and has been provided as an attachment for your review. We have reviewed and created an action plan to address each of the areas identified in the findings section of that report. There was one financial implication. The audit found that the district had overclaimed 5.35 average daily attendance counts in our independent study program, and that resulted in a minor reduction in our LCFF revenues in the amount of $60,050.07. It's recommended that the audit report for the Sierra Sands Unified School District for 22-23 be accepted as presented.
Move the recommended action.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. Any questions or comments from board members? Questions or comments from members of the public or staff? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. We will now temporarily adjourn the meeting of the Sierra Sands Unified School District Board of Education to convene the meeting of the Inyokern Schools Financing Authority. The only item on the agenda are the minutes, so unless there are corrections, they will stand as presented. We will close the meeting for the Inyokern Schools Financing Authority, reconvene the meeting of the Sierra Sands Unified School District Board of Education to entertain the consent calendar.
Move entire consent calendar.
I have 2 motions and 2 seconds for the move the entire consent calendar. Any questions or comments? Any questions, comments from public? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It is unanimous. That brings us to future agenda. Do we have any recommendations for future agenda items?
I've got, actually, two things.
Hearing no recommend, oh, I'm sorry.
One is clearly not a future agenda item, but I forgot it in my board member report. But another thing I had the opportunity to do last weekend was there was a fundraising dinner for the Ridgecrest Wrestling Club, and this is a phenomenal, brand-new organization that has started up to, help young kids learn how to wrestle and compete in wrestling tournaments, and they bring in the Burroughs wrestlers to help coach and get workouts in the off-season as well, and there used to be the Pappy Kinsfather fish fry every year to raise funds for the wrestling team, and it was a phenomenal event, and then it kind of went away for lots of reasons. I think COVID was probably the biggest one in recent years, and so Ethan Haddock is a young man who came up through Burroughs, and he started this Ridgecrest Wrestling Club, and so they had this big fundraiser thing, and it was phenomenal, and a lot of community support, and one of the best things was our director of finance and budget made cupcakes, and they were amazing. I ate a lot of them by the time the week was out.
Are you going to be able to make weight?
No, but I never was able to. That's why I wrestled heavyweight, because I never had to make weight. It was great. But a lot of the Williams were phenomenal. Coach Williams runs the show at the Burroughs, and so a really good community bringing together the youth and the high school and all of that. So it was awesome. The other thing, again, I don't think it's really a future agenda item, but maybe it is. But Ms. Poole mentioned, wanting to keep going with capturing kids' hearts. One of the things that we talked about when we met with the Capturing Kids' Hearts folks at CSBA last year was the opportunity for other folks like board members to go through the Capturing Kids' Hearts trainings. And one of the conversations that we've had is that this is not just a school thing. This is something that could be a wonderful opportunity for our community as a whole to kind of let the tentacles of this wonderfulness kind of infuse the community with good stuff. And so, like I said, I don't know if it's really a board agenda item. Maybe it becomes one, but I think it'd be nice to consider what it would take to take the Capturing Kids' Hearts system and broaden it.
Dr. Morker, could you remind me we have something on the books that for the board's participation in some kind of training, correct?
Yes. When we approved the contract for next year, it does include a half-day board training in Capturing Kids' Hearts. So that was going to be kind of part of that first approach to outside the classroom space. What does that look like? And that may be a great space to have that conversation as well. That will be like a workshop style, publicly scheduled board meeting where we can do that as well.
I'm just thrilled that it actually is a real future board agenda item. I'm not completely going off the rails, so thanks. Good, glad to hear it.
Okay, then the board will return to closed session to discuss personnel to consider appointment of Director of Facilities, and action may be taken. We will report out after that meeting. Thank you for coming. The next board meeting is May